It is the unofficial, official kickoff to the Big Ten football season, Big Ten Media Days this week down in Indianapolis. We're about to head out in just a couple hours as we're recording this. Clayton Sayfie here with Chris Balas. We're from the Wolverine.com. We'll have all your coverage down in Indy live from Lucas Oil Stadium. Cannot wait. It means football's around the corner. It means fall camp is starting in a matter of days. This is my first Big Ten Media Day, so it'll be a special one for me. Chris, you've been to quite a few, and we were talking before, not to date you, I'm not trying to age you or anything. But,
not at all.
Yeah, we were just talking before about one of your favorite memories from this event, but obviously it's always going to be memorable when you get a bunch of people, media members, coaches, players all in one spot. So I can't wait to begin. I was disappointed last year when they got canceled. So tell me a few of your favorite stories, maybe memories, and what should I expect down there?
Yeah, it's great stuff. It used to be a little bit better because there were less people. Let's be honest. There were, a handful or two people doing this for each beat, if that. You had 5 beat writers from Michigan, and it was fun because you would sit around a little round table and you would get the coaches all to yourselves. And at the end of the 2-hour period, you would go over, for example, and there's Joe Paterno sitting with 1 or 2 people, and you're sitting down and listening to his stories. And of course, this is before we knew everything about Joe Paterno and what transpired at Penn State, but listening to him talk. And I remember Dennis Fithian, one of my colleagues, saying, man, I could listen to that guy's stories all day. And it was the same thing with a lot of those coaches. Joe Tiller, man, from Purdue was classic. He would always open up with, I'd love to say that I'm happy to see you, but I'd rather be fly fishing in Montana. It was always the same joke every year. But it was a lot of fun. But the best one was the year after the Spartan Bob Clockgate game, and Bobby Williams was there. And of course, everybody knows that he stopped the clock early. There was 1 second left, and there shouldn't have been. The clock had run out. Michigan actually should have won that game. But they got together and they changed the rule after that it wasn't going to be some homer in the press box stopping the clock. The clock was going to be kept on the field, and there was going to be an official in the box. So I had to do a note, and this was my first year, I think, full-time with the Wolverine, and I had to do a note on what the coaches thought of that rule, and all of them were like, yeah, it's a good idea. It was clearly a good idea, and everybody saw what happened in East Lansing, and everybody knew about it, until I got to Bobby Williams. And then Bobby Williams, the former Michigan State coach, looked at me and he goes, shit. And he looks at me and goes, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Ann Arbor. He goes, shit. And he goes, you think they would have changed that rule for us if it was us? And I said, Coach, I don't know. I'm just doing a note here, and he goes, something other, expletive. And that was about at the end of that. But it was WTKA back in the day when WTKA was WTKA. They had I think Fithian, and I don't think Doug Karsh was there. He might have been. They played that one over and over and over again. Where you from? Where you from? And it was classic. So a lot of fun with that one. The good times with Lloyd Carr. Lloyd Carr was pretty forthcoming at these things, and that's what I really liked about him. Ask about Gabe Watson back in the day. This is before your time, probably. And hey, what are you expecting from Gabe? And you could always read between the you him, and he'd say, you better show up in shape or something like that. We'll see, because the reports were that he wasn't, he wasn't getting in shape. So, and those were the good old days. So now it's going to be kind of a free for all. It's going to kind of be like, I don't know if you ever saw Trading Places, another movie before your time, but everybody's on the floor. Yeah, when the stocks, hit and they're exchanging, and it's just a free for all. And there are so many people crowded around these podiums that you really have to work to get it. So we're going to be watching you to see how you perform. I have the utmost confidence in you, or I never would have brought you on board with us. And I know you'll do a great job, as you have since you've been here, man. Really looking forward to go down there with you, buddy.
Yeah, no, I can't wait either. And I'm, as a guy who's, trying to get into the business, going through, high school, college, I would watch all these, and I look forward to, when the coaches come up to the podium, and then you watch some of the videos of the breakout sessions with the players and things like that. And, you always get some funny stuff. I mean, I remember Jim Harbaugh's first year, 2015, when he had barely gotten up to the podium, and somebody was asking him, are you going to call Ohio State, or are you going to call them Ohio, because your predecessor called them just Ohio? And he said, who, Ohio State? Yeah, just Ohio State. So, you're going to get some funny nuggets. You're going to get some things like that. Michigan sending Jim Harbaugh for the 7th straight year. Aiden Hutchinson will be down there joining him. Josh Ross will be down there joining him. And who am I missing? Hassan Haskins will be down there joining him.
Yes.
So I think he trusts these guys to not give away a ton. Those are guys that know what they're doing. Especially I feel like Josh Ross and Aiden Hutchinson, they stood up to the mic and done those Zoom things quite a bit. But I'm excited to get some stuff out of these guys. Aiden Hutchinson, the cover boy for the Wolverine Preview magazine, which you can now order over at thewolverine.com. But let's start with Jim Harbaugh and just talk about what we expect to hear from him. He's very tight-lipped at an event like this. He always has a good quote, it seems like, a good quip. What are you expecting? What do you want to hear from Jim Harbaugh? I guess I'll start there because, this is a different year than any other year for him. The most pressure that he's faced in a season by far in his entire career as a coach. They're going to get the question about the 2-4 season. They're going to get the questions about, how he's, took a half his salary pay cut, and all that type of stuff, and how his job security isn't as solidified as it, has been in years past. What do you want to hear out of him from, those questions?
I don't really care. I got to be honest. I'm at the point now where I'm like everybody else, and whatever he says doesn't really matter. It's got to be shown on the field. And what are you going to do? How are you going to beat Ohio State? How are you going to get this team and this program where it needs to be? Because let's be honest, last year was a huge step backward, and there was COVID involved and everything else, and they had stoppages, and guys didn't seem invested. There were some younger players and even some veterans that were like, okay, let's just get this over with, it seemed like to me. And that's not Michigan, at least not the Michigan that I grew up with. Sadly, it's the Michigan that you've grown up with partially for half of your life.
Thanks for reminding me. Yeah.
Which is insane, and it's just not what it's supposed to be. So you're hoping that, I remember a couple of years ago when he said, when they were picked to win the Big Ten, I think it was 2018, and he said, I think we should be, and he kind of laid it out there and said, yeah, we should be. And they would have been had Maryland or had a good chance had Maryland converted a 2-point conversion, right? They'd have been in the Big East champs, Big Ten East champions.
Yeah, that 2019 they were actually picked.
Yeah.
So coming off of that, which, was made a lot of sense with Ryan Day coming in and unproven guys at Ohio State after. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you know what, he can say whatever he wants to say, but what I really would love to hear, and if he's being truthful, is that these guys are in great shape, that these guys are taking the summer seriously, that he's seen unbelievable gains in a lot of people, and that, hey, these guys are prepared to play and to come to play. That we've got guys that are tired of losing. It reminds me of 2011 somewhat, when you had that senior class that was like, all right, enough of this crap. We're going to beat Ohio State, and this is Brady Hoke's first team, and we're going to come together and we're going to win. And even when some of the guys from the All NFL line just a few years ago were there, they were saying the same thing. Ben Bredesen, you want those guys that are going to lead and say it's not acceptable to not go all out on every play, so on and so forth. And that's cliche, but man, and it's not something you should have to say in Michigan, but it is something that we have to say now because we've seen it. Some of these guys have been dogging it. Guys need to be held accountable. So we're going to see what happens. But to me, there's nothing that he can say that's going to say, wow, they're really getting it, and pounding the podium or anything else. None of that. I just want to see him go out and see a well-coached team that improves week to week. However, it will be exciting to get some material. A lot of people are going to want to hear what Aiden Hutchinson has to say. He doesn't pull any punches. Hassan Haskins, these guys they're good kids, so it should be a lot of fun.
Definitely, and I agree with you that what is said doesn't really matter, especially from the head coach. I feel like the players you can get a little bit more information from. You can ask them about guys that have stood out to them, whether the guys that have lined up across from them or guys that are lining up with them in some of these workouts. At the same time, fall camp hasn't started, so a lot still to be decided. I mean, I remember when Jim Harbaugh, had his preseason Zoom press conference Minnesota week last year before the opener, and you, Austin Fox, and I were talking before one of these shows, and just after his press conference, and I remember we were saying, I think he kind of likes this team, but at the same time, that was the read on what we were getting from him. I think he probably had some concerns about what the team was going to look like, and those would have been warranted, obviously, based on what happened on the field. So yeah, I think when he's asked about culture, if he is asked about that, I think those will be kind of interesting remarks to see if, because when they laid out that statement when he took his extension, he said, that there were challenges, that he understands what they are in the program, and he's going to address them. So it's not like he's gone around and has said that, there's been nothing wrong with the program. Like maybe even you've seen in years past where he's just not going to admit it publicly. They've been a little bit more forthright with those type of things, so we'll see what those responses are. But you bring up a good point as well with some of the guys that are emerging. You can't really make that stuff up as much. When you ask about a young guy who we haven't seen a ton of that we expect to maybe get in the rotation or the two deep this year, those will be good answers. And like I said, the players maybe will provide the bulk of that information.
Yeah, because Jim Harbaugh is going to tell us about Lucas Andrighetto at running
That's
back.
true. That is the best when he starts going down the entire roster and he lands on some of the walk-ons.
And you're looking at this thing, and it's like, who's this guy? Some kid from Benedictine in Florida, a walk-on. But the good news is what, those guys are important too. Let's be honest, and they're not going to play. But if they're giving a good effort, then he wants to single them out, and he's sending a message to the media through the media as well. Hey, these are the guys that are working hard. Sadly, your hardest workers your best players need to be your hardest workers. Let's put it that way. And that's been the truth on every football team, and anybody will tell you that. And they set the example. Mike Hart was that guy back in the day. That's why I love the Mike Hart edition too, and the Ron Bellamy editions, because these guys played on championship teams and they were good players. Mike Hart was an elite player, no matter what anybody says. He was an elite running back. And for him to have lived that and to have experienced that culture, that's the important thing here that these guys are missing. There is no link to a championship team here. We're talking 17 years, man. You can bring in guys, all those guys are retired with the exception of Tom Brady, and that guy's going to play until he's about 55, So they brought him in when Brady Hoke was here. And when Jim Harbaugh was here, and I'd love to get him back one more time and say, hey, man, enough's enough, So, but we'll see. You know what? You and I both know it's all going to come down to a lot of two things. Quarterback play, right? Are they going to have that quarterback that's not going to just be average? Michigan's had average quarterback play for too long. And then are they going to be able to stop the run with that front seven? Because that defensive line and that front seven, the linebackers, is suspect right now. There's not a lot of depth there. So we'll ask about some depth. We'll hear what those guys have to say. Hutchinson will be a good one to ask about that. Who are some of the young guys that are emerging? So, and those guys are usually forthright, like you said. I would expect that Jim Harbaugh is going to bring up Joey George, on the defensive line as a guy who's really battling in there too. And who knows? He's just not big enough, but he's got a lot of heart. So hopefully, it's like they say, if you could translate that heart into some of his other players' bodies, you'd have a really good thing there.
Yeah, and Nate Shanley is another walk-on that has gotten the most mention. He actually did.
He's still there.
Yeah, no, I feel like he is. I think he did not utilize his extra year. I don't even know if he's
his eighth year. Didn't utilize his 8th year. All right.
Right. So I mean, yeah, it will be. We'll get a lot of names out of the the head coach. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about what this defense is looking like too, because I wrote this today. And I wrote 10 storylines to watch at Big Ten Media Days, and one of them was obviously about the new look defense. And we talked to Mike McDonald one time in the spring, and I think it was the first week of practice, or maybe the second week
yet.
So he didn't even really know what exactly the defense was going to look like. Now they better have an idea. I would hope so, and based on the things that we've heard, they do. And we're starting to see some of those things. You were on with Chris Hutchinson last week and talking about Aiden Hutchinson's new role at the outside linebacker type of spot. Still gonna number one priority for him is getting to the passer, but there's going to be new roles for some of these guys. How are they faring at those? How do they feel the personnel lines up with the vision of what this defense is going to look like schematically? That'll be important. And then you can say on the offensive side of the ball too, sure, it's the same offensive coordinator, but he brought in a co-offensive coordinator in Sharon Moore, promoted him to offensive line coach, brought in Matt Weiss, who is an analytics guru, strategy type of guy. They brought in Mike Hart, who is going to have a hand in that offense. So it's not going to be the same offense, exactly as it was last year. You also have different personnel, as you mentioned. The quarterback's going to be different to start the year at least, than what they had at the start of last year. So there's tweaks on both sides of the ball, and I'm excited to get maybe a little bit more insight on, what those are going to be.
Yeah, and I want to hear what Harbaugh has to say about who's in charge of this offense. Is he going to say it's by committee? Is he going to say, oh, it's Josh Gaddis's offense? Everybody wanted to say, oh, it wasn't Gaddis, and Harbaugh was hamstringing him. And Josh Gaddis reached out and he said, that's absolutely not true. In fact, he was pissed off when people suggested it. And so, yes, it was Josh Gaddis's offense. Now, is Weiss going to have a huge hand in it? Is Mike Hart going to be really involved in the running game? He should be, in my opinion. This guy was an associate head coach and was an unbelievable running back here at Michigan. Again, he kind of knows what works, right? Indiana's offense has been better than Michigan's. Am I right? In the last few years. So, of course, so has just about everybody else's. So I want him involved. And that's nothing personal against Josh Gaddis, but you're talking about a guy that's been calling plays for a couple of years versus guys that have been really involved in this for a long time. So, yeah, you want it done by committee, in my opinion. More than one voice to me is a good thing. And again, nothing personal against Josh Gaddis, but for crying out loud, man, you've got resources there, utilize them. Matt Weiss, from everything we've heard, is a guru in that respect, when it comes to analytics. But self-scouting on both sides of the ball would be great, because we always talk about the defense and how everybody knew just by putting somebody in motion, what Michigan was going to run on defense. And that's how Don Brown's defenses got exposed. So I want 100% preparation where, going into a game, what the defense or the offense is going to expect, and the defense on the other side of the ball, and to be well prepared for that.
Yeah, and we've seen it at times. I remember after the Michigan State game in 2019, a 44-10 win, Harbaugh saying that credit to Josh Gaddis and the offensive staff for not only knowing what Michigan State was going to do, but knowing the adjustments that they were going to make and countering off of those. We've seen it at times, but man, it just wasn't there last year. And I understand that they were, handcuffed a little bit by some of the personnel and in the fact that they were replacing a lot, especially on the offensive line. At quarterback, Shea Patterson, I think, was a little bit underrated in his career. People were excited to move on to Joe Milton, but it didn't necessarily work out. Anything else you're looking for at Media Days? I mean, number one thing that we're excited about, and we kind of said this at the top, is just seeing people face-to-face again. We went to a couple satellite camps this summer, and those were good in the sense that, man, you could just talk to some of these guys, talk football with some of these guys, see some of our, friends in the media as well that, we're face-to-face instead of in front of a computer screen like we are right now.
Right.
And talk to some of the players as well, and just kind of that feeling that football is coming around the corner. What else do you want to see?
Yeah, and to see our colleagues and to talk to the opponents, we always do, and this will probably be your deal, to talk to some of the opponents off the record and say, hey, what did you see from Michigan last year? And they're going to tell you, they're going to be brutally honest when they're off the record. I would imagine it's going to be pretty interesting, especially about that defense, man. And we heard about, from the Wisconsin game that, some of the Michigan kids were basically asking for mercy in the second quarter, which is an absolute disgrace to anybody who ever wore the wigged helmet, saying, hey, man, this game's over. You don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. What a joke. That is not Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh needs to identify those guys and get them the hell off the field. So I
almost don't want to believe that one.
What's that?
I really don't want to believe that.
Yeah, I don't either, but it's a fact, and it's after speaking to some people that were actually on the field at the time, and it's like, man, that just can't happen. So that's what needs to be shored up. That's when we talk about culture change. That's it. And, so we'll be blunt when we talk to these players, and we'll say, hey, how do you change that, and how do you change that culture? I do feel confident with Aiden Hutchinson as a captain out there. He was missing in some of those games last year where they could really needed him, clearly, not just as a player, but as that voice, where this is a guy who gets it. His dad was an All-American here, and you can tell he's seething when things go wrong. There wasn't enough of that last year. So I think he's going to help from a leadership standpoint as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's some more ties to championships, right? When you talk about Mike Hart, when you talk about Ron Bellamy, even some Courtney Morgan, who has been around, championship teams. Aiden Hutchinson's been around somebody a whole hell of a lot that's been around championship teams and has, been an All-American. Aiden Hutchinson, by the way, 5 times. Aiden Hutchinson,
5
by
rings.
the way, a preseason All-American himself. And if he lives up to expectations this year, I think that the Michigan defense is going to be much better than it was a year ago, which, again, isn't saying a ton, but it's a start, right? So, they got to take some baby steps here in 2021. Follow along all of our Big Ten Media Day coverage at thewolverine.com. If you want to join us on our message board, use the promo code BLUE60. You can try us out for 60 days for free. So promo code Blue60 there at thewolverine.com. And we'll see you after Big Ten Media Days. Maybe we'll do a little wrap-up.